Okay, so a Friday where, it feels like for a lot of people, they think that the off season is really settling in. National Signing Day just passed, but for you and I, Drew, we're starting to really settle into the chaos. We have got a lot to talk about today. Before we jump into it all, let the people know where they can find all your great content.
Hey, Ty, thanks again for having me on. Drew England. I do a show with my co-host Zach Merrill called the Under Official Review podcast. Just like what Ty likes to do, just talk college football across the country. A lot of news right now that we're going to hit on to as well over on our channel. So I do that, and then me and my buddy Christian Williams just relaunched the Anything OU podcast, strictly OU content. You can find all that on the major platforms: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Apple, Spotify, and then our YouTube channels as well. Just search those and you'll find us.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thank you for coming on. As y'all can see, this is titled a little bit different. This is titled Through the Haze. And one of the changes that's coming in 2023, I'm going to be doing live shows more frequently. And what I mean is, we are actually going to be doing set live shows like 3 to 4 times a week. Have a time, we come together, we do a live show. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. But tonight, I think the topic everybody knows what's got to kick it off. Texas and Oklahoma are SEC bound. My goodness gracious, this feels like it's been the biggest game of cat and mouse I've seen. Just a week ago, I think a week ago today, a report came out that said it wouldn't happen until 2025, whenever the contract was officially set to expire. A lot of partners here, or a lot of players, I should say, not partners, in the background negotiating. And, I wasn't in law long, but one thing I remember, the more people are involved in the negotiation, the messier it gets every single time. But it's all sorted. Oklahoma, Texas to the SEC 2024. Drew, let me know what you're thinking, man, because this is big. It's big for recruiting. It's big for your season this year.
Yeah, huge. And I thought all along, no matter what was going to happen, I thought that it made more sense to leave in 2024, especially with the conference realignment that the Big 12 is going through and everything like that. And it's good for just everybody to go their separate ways, do what they're wanting to do. And for OU and Texas, it just made more sense for us to go ahead and leave in 24 with all the stuff that's going on, and not just our conference, but other conferences, and we'll get to some of that later. But for us, man, I'm excited. Not only, like you said, in the whole grand scheme of things, obviously TV contracts, money is going to be insane. Anytime you're a brand in the SEC, and like OU in Texas, some blue bloods programs going into the SEC just does another added element for us. But also in the whole grand scheme of things, these coaching staffs on both ends can start using those as pitches for recruits. Hey, 2024, we're absolutely going to be in the SEC. No questions about it. No ifs, ands, buts. If you want to come play in the SEC, stay around home. Proximity to home is huge, especially for a lot of these Texas kids and a lot of the recruits that we bring in both schools. I mean, Oklahoma, we make a living in Texas, and it's huge because, hey, let's stay in the SEC. And that was a pitch that Texas A&M was able to use a little bit when they moved over. But hey, stay in the state of Texas, close to home, get to play in some of these huge venues, stuff like that. So it's exciting. And with the recruiting classes and stuff that we're seeming to get, both OU and Texas, only going to be better. Now, everybody wants to talk about, and the big thing was, all right, are you guys ready? I don't know, but it's fun. So I'm excited, nevertheless, for both teams, and to just turn the page and see what we can do in the biggest stage of college football.
Yeah, look, and here's the thing. One of the points you made that I really want to piggyback off of and really dive deeper into it, 2024 made the most sense. Jay with Unfair Sports and I, we talked about this last Friday whenever the report came out that it could be 2025. And one of the things I said, it did not make sense to hold off on this. The Big Ten is expanding in 2024. UCLA, USC, boom, gone. College football playoffs expanding in 2024. I just felt like if you wanted everything to go over smooth, if you wanted college football as a whole to have a smooth transition, this was the easiest way to do it. And I think if you're Texas and Oklahoma, to the question you posed about, are we ready? I love your answer. I don't know. But I know I'm ready to get over there. And here's one thing I need people to realize. Texas and Oklahoma are massive brands. Schwartz asks, how is Texas a blue blood? Well, Schwartz, they're a blue blood. I think you could argue they're a blue blood because of the national championships they've won and because of the brand they carry. I
They're
mean,
the
you
biggest.
see,
They're the biggest brand in college football. They make the
they
most money, and I hate to say it as an Oklahoma fan, but real is real. They have a large contingent of people. An insane amount of money that they make at that university is unreal. So you have to call a spade a spade.
And the reason why that's important, and even Schwartz, even if you're not convinced that Texas is a blue blood, and look, debate is great to have. Even if you're not convinced, I'm sure you would grant us both this point. Their brand moves the needle. You want to know how we know it moves the needle? It's because something Oklahoma fans will say all the time. Texas won't have a good season, but they still recruit well. That tells you that that brand moves the needle.
Yep.
And so whenever we're talking about brands that move the needle going to the SEC, that's where I think the question of are they ready, it becomes a bit of a different topic. We've seen Big 12 teams, Missouri and Texas A&M, make a move from the Big 12 to the SEC and did so successfully. Now, I think there's a bit of nuance in that conversation. We're talking about really the bridging of stylistic differences between the Big 12 style of offense and the SEC style of offense at that time, where the SEC didn't run that style of offense. The Big 12 teams came in there and just really were able to make some stuff happen. The SEC adjusted. And the SEC became better because of those Big 12 teams. Mm-hmm. Understand what I'm saying here. They had to adapt. A new form of offense came in. They realized, okay, well, if we want to remain, we have to adapt. The same thing will happen. And the reason why Texas and Oklahoma are perfectly suited for this conversation is because they are massive brands in college football, and we know they can recruit at an elite level, which means they will fit in perfectly to the SEC. Now, one of the things, Drew, that is just mind-blowing to me, per a 2021 report, now once this move is done, 12 of the top 25 most lucrative brands in college football all sit in the SEC.
It's insane.
So what does that look like whenever we're talking about further negotiations in the future for TV rights, right? Like, yes, everything is sorted now, but we also have to understand Texas and Oklahoma are making this move not with a 3, 4, 5-year plan in mind. They're thinking long-term, and long-term looks beautiful from a revenue standpoint. So if you're at the table, how excited are you to finally get over there and to start really breaking into that SEC revenue?
Huge. I mean, as just a whole, you're talking about some serious money, and yeah, you were getting some decent money when it came to the Big 12 because of your brand and who you were. But when you're talking about a larger slice of the pie across the board, especially now with our deal with Sooner Vision and ESPN Plus and all kinds of different stuff, and then the SEC network and everything, you're almost guaranteed a game on TV all year for football. I mean, with everything going on and everything like that, you're still in the mainstream. Obviously, CBS is going to be a huge deal. We're probably going to get some of those primetime 2:30 games, and those generate a lot of money when you're talking about the SEC. And you know as well as I do, being an Alabama fan, how much exposure and how much that means to your school, and not only in a football sense, but across the board athletically. When you're talking softball, you're already talking the SEC being the best softball conference. You're adding 2 top 10 or top 5 softball programs to that conference.
And I must admit, I don't know a lot about softball. The one thing I know about, well, I should say 2 things. I hear a lot about SEC softball, but I hear a lot about Oklahoma softball. And I just know they're like the mega monster in softball.
Yeah. And so adding 2 of those programs to the SEC, obviously baseball is going to be huge. Oklahoma kickstarting what they did last year and hopefully springboarding, gymnastics, all this other stuff. And then Texas as a whole, as an athletic program, just makes a whole lot. A lot of sense. And it's not only sports, it's not only football, but down the stretch, you're talking about some serious money for a lot of your athletic programs and more exposure for some of those smaller programs within your athletic department. So huge move for both schools.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And the question has to be asked now about the Big 12, right? You added in 4 more teams. You add in BYU, you add in Cincy, UCF, and Houston, which I've said at length, I love those moves. But I said this in my video today, whenever I was talking about this, I'm a low barrier of like college football fan to please, right? If you just put on a football game, if it's halfway decent, I'm going to be happy.
I'm with you.
So I don't speak for the general populace of fan. But that being said, I just think you have to be very excited about the 4 teams that are coming in for the Big 12. But there is an uncomfortable truth if you are the Big 12. You still don't have Texas and you still don't have OU with those 4 brands coming in that I think are exceptional. One thing about UCF, they have one of the largest student bodies in the nation, right? I mean, that's a team that I've asked the question, you've asked the question, many others have asked the question, what happens if they get a Power 5 opportunity? Well, we're going to find out. But Drew, the question is, there's nothing but space and opportunity in front of Brett Yormark right now. A topic we're going to talk about after this, Pac-12 negotiations are not going according to plan right now. Does the Big 12 strike?
I think you've already seen them. Will they strike? I think they had a plan in place to counter Oklahoma and Texas. Now, is that a equal and fair across the board counter? Certainly not, because we just talked about how big both brands are as far as money and all that stuff. But the Big 12 was pretty proactive in this. They didn't just sit down and just say, oh, well, shoot, 2 of our best teams have left and I don't know what we're going to do or anything like that. They went out and got 4 quality programs. I'm not saying that they're top tier and by no means, but when you're talking really good brand, I mean, Cincinnati was just in the college football playoff not too long ago.
BYU is known for upsetting someone's season every single year.
Houston, you've got a really, really good thing going down there with recruiting.
And UCF
stuff like
declared themselves national championship.
Yeah, and you've got an experienced coach and Gus Malzahn,
True.
and stuff like that. So it's not all bad for the Big 12, and I think they're still going to try to expand some more, especially try to take advantage of what's going on in the Pac-12 right now. Maybe snatch some teams and some low-hanging fruit that because the Pac-12 is scrambling, and so I think it's no better time for the Big 12 to kind of continue to build that conference back from Texas and OU leaving, because that's a huge deal. And I think if they weren't able to get these teams, I think they'd be in a world of hurt right now. But I think that the Big 12 is going to be, I think they're going to be sustainable and they're going to stay relevant in the athletic scene, especially football. Now that those 4 teams are coming, and possibly they could do what the SEC's done and add 2 more to the party as well. And so then you're talking SEC, Big 10, and Big 12 being the top 3 conferences as far as football wise. So
yeah, and people in chat kind of echoing sentiments that I agree with. I have voiced. We have Frank saying, if I'm the Big 12, I go after Oregon and Washington like yesterday. Frank, I couldn't agree more.
No question.
I genuinely. And look, this is just from a pure numbers game. You lose the 2 biggest brands in the Big 12, Texas and Oklahoma. They go to the SEC. USC and UCLA are spoken for 2024 going to the Big 10, and the Big 10 just signed that mega deal. So they're good. Yeah. You go after the 2 biggest brands left, Oregon and Washington. I completely agree. I would have been there right as well.
And here's another team, and I don't know if you want to talk about teams that the Big 12 should go after.
Absolutely.
But, I think, to Boom's point, that's Utah would be phenomenal. What about Utah and Colorado? 2 teams that are right there in the middle. Demographically, that would be huge, especially if Dion continues to do what he's doing and that product starts winning on the field. Every conference is going to try to go after Colorado.
Well, even right now, I mean, look, one of the things, media is wild the way this works, right? And that's one thing, like, as I'm transitioning to being able to do this as a full-time career and attempt to really pursue this as a full-time career, there's a few things that you just come to realize, and that's like the absurdity of digital media, right? And like when you really start learning about this, already think about the impact that is being felt at Colorado. I mean, they haven't even played a game. Look at the impressions, right? Look at, I bet if we just went into the Google analytics page and typed in Colorado and looked at their search volume when Coach Prime got there, I guarantee it spiked. They've already added value, and a game hasn't been played. His son's YouTube channel has boomed. The reason why I say this is important, guys, it's a phrase that I swear to God, in a few months, I'm going to put on a sweatshirt or a hat. I'm going to make merch out of this. Get programs, get recruits, get coaches that move the needle.
Yep.
If you can get something that moves the needle, it will invoke a feeling. It will inspire a reaction, good, bad, or indifferent.
Yep. Well, and that's exactly one of the reasons that the SEC wanted Texas. They can move the needle financially.
They move the needle. They wanted Oklahoma. They move the needle.
100%.
Why did the Big Ten go after USC? They move the needle.
Biggest TV market in the country.
And UCLA, look, we can talk about their football program not being the level of dominance maybe a lot of their fans want. They still have great programs outside of that.
Yep.
Still a great academic school. It makes complete sense that the Big Ten would go after them. Yep. And even then, they just got one of the best prospects in all of college football recruiting, Dante Moore, who I can't wait to see.
And Chip Kelly sells tickets too. So.
And Chip Kelly moves the needle.
Yep.
The reason why, Boom, your comment is still up here is because there's something embedded in it that really is honing in on the theme I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So even if we sideline Oregon and Washington, even if I play devil's advocate right now and I say Oregon, Washington, they'll probably go to the Big Ten. I don't know that to be the case. I'm just creating lines right now. Just creating an argument. Yeah.
Oh.
Even if you took Colorado and Utah, you're talking about one program that social media presence right now is booming. And because of that, all eyes are on them. And you're talking about another that you just got their rival. You just lost one of the biggest rivalries in college football. You just lost one of the biggest rivalries in sports, American sports, especially the Red River Shootout. Go get Utah, put Utah, BYU, Battle of the Mormons. You have just brought in another rivalry. Is it going to fill the shoes of the Red River Shootout? No, but that's a tall task. If you're trying to fill those shoes, I don't know what you're going to do. I just don't know. But regardless, you make that move, it's going to move the needle, and especially with Utah. Utah, they are a solid program, and I think putting that rivalry with Utah and BYU in the Big 12 is a winning recipe. Now, I think another school we talked about in the green room that I'm surprised hasn't been brought up. What about Arizona and Arizona State? I know Arizona State is not in the best place right now, but Kenny Dillingham has made some great hires in that coaching department.
Mm-hmm.
Jaden Rashad is a huge win for them. That's another team that I would keep an eye out for if I was a fan of the Big 12. What do you think about that?
No, I completely agree. And that's something we were talking about is Kelly Dillingham and that staff that he's hired. They're trying to move that needle that you were talking about. And they're trying to, bring back their relevancy in college football. And not only that, just in college sports across the board, but you're in a great place to recruit. Tempe, Arizona is a hot spot for people. Like you said, with UCF, it's a big party school. A lot of kids go there. There's a huge enrollment as far as Arizona State. It's geographically in a great place. Phoenix is blown up, as you've seen this week. I mean, you've got the freaking WM Phoenix Open, huge golf tournament, and you got the Super Bowl out there this week. So what better place to be as a college student with all that stuff kind of going on? And it would be huge, especially if Kenny Dillingham and that staff, you started seeing them recruit and then putting a great product on the field. That'd be huge for the Big 12, because then you're into a good demographic and a good area as far as TV exposure, all that good stuff. And it's a booming place out there in Phoenix, Scottsdale area and all that.
Yeah. And not only that, it's a recruiting hotbed.
Oh, huge.
So much talent. Not only are you being able to access the talent in the state of Arizona, but then you have the West Coast talent as well.
Yep.
That's a really intriguing area. Now, before we dive into the West Coast, because the Pac-12, they're in some trouble, I do want to hit some comments. And Schwartz, I both agree with you and disagree with you here, man. And let me start with where I agree with you. The whole basic spirit of this comment, I do agree with. Where I disagree with you is I think you're undervaluing how much these conference heads value money. And what I mean when I say that is we have to imagine Prime will be there. What if he's there 3 years? Well, that would gain him entry into the Big 12. And at that point, I think they would value the money that comes with it. That is a question, though. That is something we have to see.
Well, and especially if he starts winning at Colorado, that'll be more intriguing for him to stay, and say, oh, we can continue to build this, go to the Pac-12. It could very easily, turn into a longer term contract there at Colorado, but you never really know. There's a lot of variables to that. But if he goes out there and starts winning, especially if he goes out and wins a conference championship, or he's contending for a playoff spot with this now 12-team format coming up, and the Big 12 comes calling and they say, here, look at what we can give you guys and all that stuff, that's a more enticing sell to try to keep a guy like that around at that program. So,
well, Schwartz, this comment is only good so long as they don't have him. He's there.
Yep.
So the theoretical is, I agree with what you're saying, but he's there.
Yep.
And if he's going to be there in 2024, that comes with a lot of money. Now, I agree with what you're saying, but once again, I think you're undervaluing, especially if you're like the Big 12, how much attention that would garner you for whenever they initially made that move. Now, I do love this, though, and I'm going to tell you why I love this, Schwartz. Because if you put Colorado in the Big 10, their rival is there. Their historic rival, one of their big ones, Nebraska. It moves the needle. Yep. And then you further it. Clemson and Florida State to the SEC. Come on now. Who would say no to that?
That would be enormous.
That would be amazing.
Huge.
Love that.
You're talking about some really great games across that conference.
Well, and then you throw in Miami as well. Why not? Why not? Let's round out the state of Florida. But I do think there is a larger discussion to be had here, Schwartz, and I don't disagree with you. Let's get it understood. I don't disagree with you. This is a short-term solution when we're talking about Prime with Colorado, because he is the value there, and we've seen that.
Ooh, Hank, that's a great point. I could create another job for somebody else.
But this is something Jay and I have talked about. If Prime is successful there, Sean Lewis can step right into that young guy situation that's booming. That's going to be interesting. But
good comment, Hank.
Great comment, Hank. Yeah. Now, you want to know what is interesting? The Pac-12 negotiations have been a nightmare per all reports right now.
Gosh.
And I think there's a few factors in this. First and foremost, I think that the Pac-12 vastly underestimated what losing USC and UCLA would mean to that
100%.
And here's a little piece I want to give to all of you that I found amazing. Whenever they were beginning these stages for contract negotiations for the Pac-12, the commissioner of the Pac-12 went to the ADs and told them they could expect around $40 million per team in the new TV contracts.
Not bad.
Not bad at all. Yeah. Here's the problem. The Big 12 beat them to the punch.
Yep.
When the Big 12 beat them to the punch, it reset the market. And think of this like an NFL quarterback. Whenever a quarterback signs a contract, he sets the market value. If Aaron Rodgers is, the highest paid quarterback, if Patrick Mahomes' contract is up next, they're going to exceed that contract. But you got to hope you're one of those guys.
Yep.
You got to hope you're one of those guys.
Yeah, the Big 12 definitely cut in line there on that one.
Unfortunately for the Pac-12, they're not that guy, pal. They're not that guy.
Yep.
Whenever the Big 12 beat the Pac-12 to the punch, at the end of the day, whenever the Big 12 negotiations were done, their contract sat at around $31.6 million per team.
Yep.
What TV station, what brand is going to look at the Pac-12 and say, we're going to pay you more than we're paying the Big 12, whenever the Pac-12 is losing USC and UCLA? On top of that, there's a known uncertainty in the conference. So you don't have major players even willing to start good faith negotiations because they don't feel like there's a stable foundation under them. The Pac-12 is in trouble right now.
Yep.
And every day that goes by, their situation gets a little bit more dire, which is why whenever we were talking about the Big 12, should they add in teams, my first inclination was look right to Pac-12. What's going on there?
Easy pickings right now.
Easy
Seems
pickings. Now, John has an interesting comment here. He says Boise State and San Diego State would be a good fit for the Big 12, and I don't disagree, but San Diego State, per some reports, they might be trying to go to the Pac-12.
Them and SMU are the two teams that have kind of surfaced as teams that could be on the move to the Pac-12, and that right there, you're trading, and you're talking about the Big 12 losing OU and Texas, the Pac-12 losing USC and UCLA are huge, but if you get two teams like that, you're not really even scratching the surface of trying to make any headway in those negotiations. And even some of the teams are not thrilled about having SMU and San Diego State in the mix. But with USC, it's like Colorado, man. They're moving the needle right now because of Lincoln Riley. Caleb Williams just won the Heisman. They're wanting to see what Lincoln Riley does in year 2 and beyond. And that's why the Big Ten was so proactive, just like the Pac-12 or the Big 12 was, and said, hey, we're not going to wait. We're going to go strike while the iron's hot and go grab these two teams. And UCLA is not up there, but they're still relevant. They still have a lot of viewership with Chip Kelly and, like you said, Dante Moore, a highly talented quarterback coming in, stuff like that. So I think in the Big Ten just did what the Big 12 did and struck while the iron was hot. And now the Pac-12 is left, with their pants down, and they're saying, holy crap, what are we going to do? Because that's what they're thinking right now is it's in dire straits for the Pac-12 right now.
Yeah. And there's a lot of faults that lie here. One of the biggest is they were overpromised and now they're being undersold. Yep. And they're being undersold because when the Big 12 cut in line, and granted, there was no line, but the Big 12 just beat them to the punch. Whenever they did that, they capped what they would expect. That's tough whenever the Big 12 effectively capped it at around 31 million. And you just got done telling everybody, I'm going to bring you in 40 million. Oh, by the way, the two teams that sit in the largest media market in the United States, they're gone. Oh. They're gone to the conference that just signed the mega deal.
That's a huge, huge, huge loss.
Huge.
Even bigger than the Big 12 losing OU and Texas. That's a bigger deal for the Pac-12 losing their two biggest teams as far as TV market, and USC right now is as hot as gold. And so losing a brand like that, they're one of the top brands in college football across the board. And with Lincoln Riley and company doing what they're doing, and if they go have another year like they did this year, it only just further pours salt in the wound of the Pac-12.
Well, y'all go ahead and get your tomatoes ready to throw at me, because here it comes, a little caveat subtopic within this, kind of talking about Caleb Williams. Man, he is, name me another guy that's come back after winning the Heisman that might be in just as good of an opportunity to repeat. There is no more Bryce Young. There is no more CJ Stroud. Bijan's gone. Caleb Williams is there. Now there's Drake May. There is unbelievably gifted football players, but Caleb is the biggest name undoubtedly this year in that quarterback room. When was the last time you remember a guy who won the Heisman that, I mean, their path is as linear as any I can remember to repeat?
It's been a while. I mean, you're probably talking about Tim Tebow, maybe someone like that. I can think back. Lamar Jackson, he came back after his year, stuff like that. But I can't think of really anybody who has an easier path to try to win a second straight Heisman than Caleb Williams at USC right now. So probably the guy that's definitely the odds-on favorite to win it. Now it's easier said than done because that's why only one person's ever done it. Won 2 Heismans in back-to-back, and that was in the 70s with Archie Griffin. But so I'm not crowning it now, but he certainly has the easiest path as far as guys coming back.
I disagree completely, Jimmy. I disagree completely that Bryce Young had the same path.
Well, you had guys that were easily compared to him and saying, could win the Heisman this year.
Yeah.
This year, you're like Caleb Williams and, like you said, Drake May, and you're trying to push guys into that 4 or 5 spots. With Bryce Young, he had a ton of guys that were
No, I agree with you. He could have repeated, but I don't think he had the same chance because of the obstacles he had in front of him, the other teams, like the other quarterbacks he had to go up against, and then inevitably, I mean, he would have to play Georgia. Now, they didn't make it that far. They faltered before they ever got there, but you get what I mean. Like, for Caleb, if he balls out all year, his biggest test before the playoffs will be Utah. Oregon?
Granted, that's a big test for him.
It's a big test. That's no disrespect to Utah. You know
how much I think. We're just talking about comparing players and coming up with our list of guys that could really, win the Heisman. Okay, certainly if Kyler came back, but we're talking about guys that are actually coming back. So
that is a good one. I was thinking about that one, Schwartz.
Yeah, sure, absolutely, Schwartz.
That's one that hit my head, and I was like, oh, but he didn't come back. No, but that's where my head went. But I just think about that because look, Caleb, he has all the ability in the world.
Generational type player.
If he continues to develop, if he continues to make strides, he's going to be a real tough person to stop. And look, I defend the Pac-12 a little bit, but one thing I won't defend is they don't play much defense out there. And if you're a guy like Caleb Williams, you can get away with a lot. And y'all can probably all hear my dog going crazy as I think my fiance is probably home. So that's going to be a fun one for her to sort through. Schwartz says, like Bryce Young. Mike says, I heard rumors that the Big Ten wanted Washington, Stanford, and Oregon. Now, that would make a lot of sense. That'd make a lot of sense. Matt says, is OU in the driver's seat for linebacker Sammy Brown? This is one that I think we should talk about a little bit before we kind of, You know what, Matt, let's put a pin in this. We're going to talk about our last topic, and then we will kind of pivot to college football news. So let's put a pin in that, but we're going to cover that because that's a good question. But the last topic on docket for this evening, before really diving into comments and doing what we do, big name coaches that need big years. And there's a lot of them, actually.
Yep.
There is a lot of them. I think the easy answer here to kick this off, Jimbo Fisher.
Yeah, no doubt about that. You're not going to get too many arguments after that.
No, and I think if I even had the most hardcore A&M fans sitting across from me, they might push back in areas of my argument, but I think the general theory behind it, they would be like, he's near the top of that list. He's getting paid Kirby and Saban money, and he's not giving you Kirby and Saban results. Drew,
close.
One of the things I talked about, and I don't have it in front of me, it's actually in one of my notebooks. It's sitting in the little thing right back there, that UNT notebook. It's in that. But whenever we look at A&M, the difference between Jimbo and, a lot of coaches that they've moved on from, negligible. Absolutely negligible.
Yep.
And for me, I have this question right here. What's the standard of acceptability for Texas A&M?
Yep. I think they've been asking that question for a long time.
What is it? What are your standards?
Yep.
Is it 8 wins? Is it 9 wins? Is it 10 wins? Is it a bowl game? Is it a conference championship? I don't know.
Yep.
Because you extended Jimbo Fisher and you gave him this massive contract in a year where you didn't have a bad year, but you were no world beater. Your biggest claim to fame in the year in which you gave Jimbo that contract extension was 2 things. You beat Alabama, which you beat a good Alabama team. I'll give you that. No doubt about that. Beat them. And then 2, you had the best recruiting class we've seen in the modern era of rankings. Now, how that translates remains to be seen. But as far as how they stack up, fantastic recruiting class. Other than that, though, he has not given you the results that coaches at that level get paid. What is it going to take for Jimbo Fisher to really be safe this season from having that seat get any hotter for him?
Well, first he's got to win. He's got to get over 500. That's a start, and then you've got to get to. I think you almost got to get to 8-9 wins, and beat a good opponent down the stretch, and show some progress after they gave you that big massive contract. I would say 8-9 wins and beat a good team that you're not supposed to beat. this year would probably cool his seat down a little bit. So that's where I see A&M. But I mean, you got
the only problem I have with that,
and helping. Yeah. So I mean,
from a logical standpoint, I do not disagree with you. I think you're 100% right. My problem with that, Drew, is that A&M and their administration did an illogical thing. They handed him the keys to the kingdom and all of the wealth within it before they ever had any results. What is the difference between Kevin Sumlin and Jimbo Fisher? Well, one big difference, I'll tell you, Jimbo does recruit better, but Jimbo also has a group of 5 loss.
Yep.
Kevin Sumlin didn't have that.
Nope.
But if you look at their records, they're almost identical. One of them got fired. The other one was handed the keys to the kingdom. And I don't understand what your standard of acceptability is.
Frank nailed it on the head. Absolute 100% answer right there. That spot on.
Yeah.
They tried to buy results and needed a culture established. The great programs have culture. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah.
Frank, that right there is just 100% nailed it right on the freaking head.
100%. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. And now, because of that, while I agree with you, Drew, logically, 8 wins should be great for Texas A&M. They're not paying him to win 8 games. Nope. They're paying him to win national championships. That's what Saban's
to Frank's point right here.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just trying to get quick microwave results.
So I don't know that 8 wins is good enough, unfortunately. Now, I'm not saying he'll be fired this year, but I think if he goes out there with 8 wins, that fire is not extinguished at all.
It's not, but that's why I said you need to throw in a marquee win with it.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Well,
that's if you just go out and win 7 or 8 games and you kind of eke out some wins against your non-conference, stuff like that, and you don't look good doing it, if you go out there and get a marquee win, especially on the road, if they go out and get a marquee win on the road, that would bode well for them. But
how do I pin this to where it never leaves? This is a great comment. A&M can't buy wins with oil money, and Kirk, talking about Kirk Ferentz, having his kid as OC can't buy you wins for Iowa. That's one we're going to talk about to end. That's one of the craziest things I've seen in college football. Mm-hmm. That contract clause they gave him about scoring 25, that's ridiculous. We'll talk about that later.
Mike
right?
G, that's a great comment though.
Yeah.
But
I think Dabo's safe primetime, and here's why, man.
Not a bad argument, though.
No. It's one that I certainly would listen to. It's one that I would certainly listen to. I would probably disagree. And here's one of the reasons, primetime. He just lost Venables. Mm-hmm. Venables has been with him for a long time, and they have been so successful together. Not only that, he lost Bates. He lost Thad Turnip Speed, right? He lost a lot. Yep. And even then, they weren't terrible this year, right? Like, they weren't good. They were a little bit like Alabama this year, where relative to their standards, not good. Yeah. Not good. But relative to the standards of like the average college football team, how many teams would have traded places with Clemson this year to be like, I would take their end record. Right. I don't know about Oklahoma, right? Like y'all are trending but you get my point.
I'll take the record.
You take the record. That's fair.
But
that's
to dig into Prime's question, I think when you're looking at Dabo this year and you're looking at Clemson, I think the defense, they've proven that they can hang in there and they can still be pretty good with the recruiting and stuff they do. Offensively, you did a great thing in hiring Garrett Riley. Now it's time to show it on the field, and that's exactly to Zach, my co-host on our channel. That's what he said. Clemson has not been able to win big games without a really, really good quarterback,
without a generational quarterback.
Yeah. So that is where I think you need to dig into what Clemson is doing is on the offensive side of the ball. If you do not see some progress, and there's no excuse now, you've got your quarterback, you've got your young quarterback, you've got your offensive coordinator, you've still got Will Shipley coming back as well in your run game. And then young playmakers on the outside, your offensive line is we'll see what happens there, but now it's time to produce on the offensive side of the ball and start scoring more points. Ergo, Texas A&M and Jimbo Fisher hiring his hire. But yeah, that's where you've got to start seeing progress is on the offensive side of the ball if you're Clemson. So I think a big year for Clemson's offense to add to talk about our question, not necessarily coaching, but offensively, Clemson needs to have a lot better year to help that not become a question in the future for Dabo Swinney.
So I want to dive deeper into this primetime because I have two ways to look at this. He says Dabo's getting a pass with him losing Venables, but why can't Venables get the same treatment around college football world? So I have two responses to this. The first is the harsh reality, and then the second, I think, is the truth, right? The harsh reality is because Venables had a losing record in the first time in how many years for the Oklahoma Sooners?
Mm-hmm.
Clemson lost 3 games. They won 11-3.
Yep.
That's a world of difference, right?
Yeah.
Like they doubled almost Oklahoma's wins. So that's one. Two, anybody really seriously complaining about Brent Venables and his first year as a head coach is being impatient. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that anybody who's saying, "Oh, Brent Venables bad" off of 1 year.
No, it's got to become a pattern. And for the question that everybody's talking about with Dabo, it's not become a pattern. He's not even close to the hot seat yet.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So, but the second thing is, and the truth to the matter is, primetime. I don't think that anybody giving Venables a lot of crap for this past year. Look, I'm not saying he should be absolved from blame. Oklahoma is not a 6-7 program. That's not what they are. That's not what the fans were going to accept. But at the same time, the man's a first-year head coach. The program got gutted the year before. He did great work in the transfer portal. He did great work in recruiting, salvaging that. But realities are still the same, right? Like he needs 3 years before we even begin this conversation of is Brent Venables on the hot seat? No. We need 3 years before we can.
Well, now certainly should he does he need a big year this year in our standards, bigger than 6 and 7? I think 8-9 wins would be a bigger year for Venables and Oklahoma. Just surface level talking.
Yeah, and so I think Oklahoma, right? I wouldn't buy into the narrative, Prime, if I was you, that Brent Venables is problematic or anything like that. Way too early, man. Way too early. Yep. And the Big 12 cannibalized itself like always this year. So, I mean, you look at Oklahoma, they lost a few games really close. They lost a few games really bad. Yep. But you learned. You had a great showing in the bowl game. Didn't get the results you wanted, but you had a great showing in the bowl game. And that was all in Brent Venables' first year as a head coach. So
and you had teams that nobody expected to do anything in the Big 12. I mean, TCU.
Kansas.
Freaking, Kansas State.
Kansas State was very good. TCU.
Yep.
Texas was good this year.
Yep.
I mean, they went 8-5, but let's be honest. You want to. I think that's a perfect segue. There was a name you were going to throw out that we talked about in the green room, Sark. Talk to us about Sark, because I don't think he's on the same level of Jimbo whenever we're talking about big name head coaches that have to have a big year. He's not there.
No, I think he's between a guy like probably, Venables, just saying the bar, and then Dabo at Texas A&M. I think he's right there in the middle between those guys, that he's got to win. He's got to win like at least 9 games at the floor.
I'd say 10, yeah.
Yeah, 9, 10. He's got to make a Big 12 championship appearance for them to continue the progress and the talks with Sark. Now, am I saying he's going to get fired? I think the way he gets fired is if he goes out and completely tanks the season and loses and ends up with a 6-7 record like you saw with Oklahoma this year. I think that's something that you may see, but I think Texas has got to have a huge leap forward, because now they're running out of excuses. Granted, they'll probably use the excuse if they did struggle. Oh, well, we lost Bijan Robinson, we lost Roschon Johnson, we lost some of these guys, but you still got some good playmakers out there.
Great recruiting class as well. In terms of acquiring needs, Cedric Baxter, Anthony Hill, huge wins.
Now, Matt, I'm not saying he's going to get fired, but that's the standard. When we're talking about standards, that's what Texas, that's their standards. They hold to a high standard. That's why you've went through coaches galore the last 8 years with, you're talking Charlie Strong, Tom Herman, Sark, all this. That's why you see this constant attrition and turnover in their head coaches, is because their standard is so high. So.
And you want to know what it creates, and I think it goes a long way. And I would love if Nino, Steven with Fanatic Perspective, Nash, any of the great Texas content creators, Homer was on here right now. I'd love to talk with them about this. So I probably will reach out to them and do a little joint video with them on this. But it creates a cogwheel, right? Where your expectations are here. You're not meeting your expectations, so you get rid of the coach. Well, I'm a nerd, right? So think of this like coding. You're coding, you're doing your thing. You have one spaghetti line of code, and you're like, it's good enough. I'll come back and fix it later. Well, you build the whole program on top of this one piece of spaghetti code. Now, if something goes wrong, God help you. Right? Like you're just going to have a bad time.
It's a backbreaker. Yep.
So every time they get rid of somebody early, right, their expectations get in their way, they're only adding in to how deep of a hole they have to climb out of. They're digging their own grave. And so that's why Sark needs the leeway. He has got to have the patience, but that being said, it has got to come with improvement. It can't just be patience for the sake of patience, right? We have to have an understanding.
I think Texas can be compared to Arkansas in a lot of ways because of the things that you just said. The expectations and having patience for those head coaches in the seat. Because if you think back to like Arkansas a couple years ago, Brent Bielema won 7, 8, 9 games. And then the first season that he had that was not as good, they fired him. And then you went on to Chad Morris. And look at the hole you're trying to still dig out of by hiring Sam Pittman. Now, Sam Pittman's a great hire, and they have to be patient. I think with Texas, you can compare them to Arkansas in a lot of ways as far as their attrition and their turnover in head coaches. And Bobby Petrino, it goes back to Bobby Petrino and how they're still seemingly digging out of that hole that he created, with a motorcycle and a blonde. So, it's one of those things where's your standards, and are you okay with, lowering those standards to have a decent year? And are you going to be willing enough to have a coach stick around and see what you could really do in 3 or 4 years?
Now, here's an interesting comment from Lol J. Denson. He says, has the he beat Ohio State so he can keep his job excuse run out for Harbaugh? Does a chip have to come soon? Denson, I have to come clean here. I was in the camp where a few years ago, I was saying, this was right before I really started YouTube, but I was someone who, if I would have had this channel 3 years ago, I'd have been beating my chest saying Harbaugh might be on the hot seat if something doesn't shake.
Mm-hmm.
That rivalry is so deep. It's certainly not the only reason, right? Like if he goes out there and stinks up the joint for the entire season and just wins that one game, that's not going to be enough.
Mm-hmm.
But he's made the playoffs, right? He made the playoffs, and that's hard.
Well, and he beat Ohio State 2 years in a row.
And he's beaten Ohio State twice, and he's made the playoffs. I get it, right? This is what I would talk about before Oklahoma had Lincoln Riley leave, and people from other conferences would say, we're not worried about Oklahoma. They get beat every time they go to the playoffs, but they made it.
Yep.
How many teams can say they made it? It is so difficult to get to the dance. And we as fans, naturally, will almost undervalue how difficult it is. So
no doubt.
A few years ago, Denson, I would have been right beside you, my man. We could have marched on Ann Arbor together. I'd have been right there with you. But right now, I have to admit, he's bought himself a lot of security there. Now, I'll tell you the part about Harbaugh that's the strangest to me. It's the public flirtation with the NFL.
Yeah, that it bothers the hell out of me. Like
that's weird.
Either stay or go.
Exactly.
And don't try to, I don't know if you're getting clicks or whatever you're trying to do. Just if you want to be at Michigan, be at Michigan. If you want to go to the NFL, go to the NFL. Simple as that. You have the clout. You have the ability to do whatever you want to do. Just go do it.
Yeah.
I'm fine with whatever, but just make your decision and be committed wherever you're at.
Yeah. And look, I'm going to say it again. 3 years ago, I would have been leading the charge of Harbaugh hot seat after this season if things don't go well. Well, that was the year after that they beat Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Dang, that's hard for me to be like, oh, he needs to be fired now.
Sure.
Now, once again, the weirdest thing after last season, you beat Ohio State, you get to the playoff, you do your thing, and then you flirt with the NFL. That's really the weirdest thing to me. Now, give me another coach, man. Big name coach that has to have a big year.
A coach that has going along with the Jimbo Fisher talk and 1A, 1B, another guy who is, I think, 1B that needs to have a huge year. And we talked about it in the green room. A guy like James Franklin at Penn State.
Yeah.
He needs a big year. He needs a marquee win. He needs a win against Michigan or Ohio State. That would be the other coach that I think is at 1B because of how long he's been at Penn State and what he's done. He's won some good games. He's won 9-10 win seasons, but when it's bad, it's been bad, and you're scratching your head. You don't have Sean Clifford anymore. You're breaking in a new quarterback. So a lot of things that are trending in a different direction, I think, at Penn State. You gotta have your bell cow running back and be physical and win some of these games. But I think James Franklin is a name that has been in the saddle for a while at a place that needs an absolute big year.
I got one for you. And I'm interested in your reaction. I'm interested in chat's reaction. And Dinson, I must admit, man, you made me think of something. I just gave that whole spiel about Harbaugh. And Mike, I do agree with you. Harbaugh, the prodigal son in Ann Arbor, was never on the hot seat. And I agree. Let me clarify, because I know sometimes I can get excited and just start ramping up. I never thought Harbaugh was on the hot seat, but the year where he ended up beating Ohio State, that offseason, I was very much of the mindset that if things don't really start turning around this year, it might be time to turn on that stove a little bit and warm this seat up. Now, granted, that's the year where they really started getting it together, really clicking. And now that seat. Frank, dang it. What about Ryan Day? Hear me out here. Hear me out here. Hear me out, because he's not on the hot seat.
I wish Zach was on right now.
He's not on the hot seat.
No, but it's an intriguing argument.
I want to get that well clear, and I do not believe he should be on the hot seat.
I agree.
Want to once again say this. Ryan Day is not on the hot seat, and nor should he be on the hot seat. But if we're talking about coaches that probably want to have a really big year, Ryan Day is there. Look, Ohio State, that's a proud fan base, and they've just lost to Michigan twice in a row.
And that's the play. You don't accept losing to Michigan 3 years in a row.
Not there.
If you lose to Michigan 3 years in a row, there will be serious conversations in the offseason. I have no doubt.
Well, and also, and I could be wrong about this. Someone in chat, please correct me if I am, but I do believe, I can't look it up right now in the middle of the live stream, obviously, but I do believe that while this was a good class for them recruiting, they only had 1 5-star. That's the least amount of 5 stars they've pulled since like 2016.
Yep.
So once again, I don't think Ryan Day's on the hot seat.
I think what Prime said it best. Ryan Day is an interesting topic.
Yes. No
I think
doubt.
that's the best way you could describe that right now. Good comment, Prime, but interesting topic. I would say that.
We'll talk about Napier, Matt, but no, I don't think Napier is on the hot seat.
Too early.
Way too early.
Yeah.
I'll be at the game, boys. Ryan Day going 0-3. You'll be at the game, you lucky dog. You. That's a bucket list game for me, Mike. You know
100.
what? I want to hear y'all's bucket list games as well. Let me know.
Yeah. Mike Gundy could certainly. Yeah. I don't think he'll ever get fired at Oklahoma State, though.
You want to know a great topic.
No.
Schwartz coming in as well. Boom, 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 boom. Yes, he should be. But will he?
Yep.
I don't know, because here's the problem if you're Oklahoma State. Who are you going to hire?
Yep. And it's back to the point where of your standards and your culture. What is realistic and what is actual reality? Where do you want to be?
Oklahoma State, guys, they are losing such a high proportion of talent.
Gosh.
It actually makes me sad. let me see if I can't find this article because it genuinely just depresses me to no end.
Yep.
But it's something like if you're looking at all of the colleges in college football that lost talent to the transfer portal, they're among the highest in the percentage of their talent that played meaningful snaps for them.
Well, and the biggest alarm is losing your 4-year starting quarterback, Spencer Sanders.
Not only losing him to Ole Miss, guys, and Hank, you've been saying Kiffin, and I do think that's an interesting one, is Kiffin. My question is what, like I asked with A&M, what's your standard of acceptability at Ole Miss? And I think Kiffin is just someone who moves the needle in terms of he's going to have them talked about. He's going to snag some good recruits. They might not have a top recruiting class, but he'll have one or two just stellar.
Well, and here's the thing about Lane Kiffin is he can develop some really good talent. Like if you look at some of the running backs, Quinshon Junkins, some of these guys that weren't household names, you're gonna put Quinshon Junkins in the category of one of the best running backs returning this year, and stuff like that. He's upped some guys' game and got them to the next level that you haven't otherwise seen. Matt Corral, a guy that nobody really talked about until after they had a really good season at Ole Miss, and so.
Well, we know what this does with offense with Lane Kiffin. Look, I know that Kiffin is a polarizing figure in college football. A lot of people don't like him. Guys, we can all come together beside the fire and sing Kumbaya and admit this. The man, his offensive prowess, it's so much fun to watch.
Yep.
He's going to put together an offense. And Drew, I'm not going to lie to you, man. Chad is getting some great names.
Yep.
Mac Brown.
Mac is a household name at UNC. I don't think they're going to fire him. I think they just brought him back to bridge the gap to hire somebody younger and everything.
I do agree with you there.
I think he's a stable guy, and I think that he's going to retire and kind of ride off into the sunset. I think they have a plan in place at UNC, and they know what they're doing. I don't think he's the long-term solution, and I think he knows that. I think he wanted to come back and reaffirm and reestablish the program and hand it over to a younger guy.
Yeah, that's plausible. What about Dave Aranda at Baylor? Nick makes the point.
Interesting topic, because
they had so much success 2 years ago.
Yep.
And I think I think he's in kind of the line of they're not on the hot seat, but man, they won a big year this year.
Here's a question too, and I love the chat. I like the interaction, all that stuff. It helps our channels a ton. Make sure if you're subscribe if you aren't already, because Ty makes some great points. Matt, you're not wrong with that one either. That's another interesting topic, and something that you, I think, have to entertain after this season, and kind of see where the dust settles, what kind of season Iowa State has, because I certainly don't think he's on the hot seat, but I think his seat could definitely to get warmer, or he could land another job, because he was one of the names that popped up the last couple of years as moving to bigger schools, but now he's, that fire has died down. Chip Kelly, I don't think he's even close to the hot seat yet.
I don't think so, but I do think this is an interesting conversation, Prime, about what's next for UCLA. I mean, they had a great year this year. DTR was phenomenal for them. They get in a great quarterback. And I think that buys you some time, but I do think, Prime, this is a great topic. What is next for UCLA?
John, Neil Brown's seat is on fire. I don't know how he's still sitting in it. I think the win against Oklahoma put at least a bucket of water on that fire for right now.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. But yeah, his seat is still on fire, and I don't know how. I think, hate to say it, I think the Oklahoma win saved his job for at least one more year.
No, I'm gonna give you a name right now, and I don't think they're on the hot seat. I don't, but I do think that there is. Denson, my man.
Yeah. I was just about to.
This wasn't where I was going, right? Because this one is much more topic appropriate, and I must admit, Denson, this is a better one.
I love it though. I love it. I'm here for it.
I have no retort. You're right. He came in, utilized the transfer portal, and you know what? There is a lesson Mel Tucker taught us. You can't build off the transfer portal. You can bandage with the
Mhm.
transfer portal, but don't expect to just build
I love it.
with the portal.
Yep.
It's a 1-year solution, but recruiting is still king. It is
Yep.
still king. Development is still king. Now, here's the name I'm going to give you. God dang it, people are good, man. Every time someone says it.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Do I think Mario Cristobal is on the hot seat? No, not at all. He's that seat, it's not even warm yet. It's not even warm. But Mario Cristobal, there has been a pattern emerge. Great recruiter. Where in the hell is his offense half the time?
Mm-hmm.
That's my biggest question whenever I watched old Oregon with Justin Herbert. When Justin Herbert was in college, 33% of his passes were behind or at the line of scrimmage.
Yep.
Unheard of. Absolutely unheard of. Then, whenever we look at this further, whenever I was really diving in to the Steele hire, right?
Yep.
One of the things I noticed was how much Miami's offense slid.
Yep.
In 2021, their offense was top 30, while their defense was in the 80s. In 2022, their offense was 97th, and their defense was 68th.
Yep.
They couldn't stay on the field. Against Clemson, Clemson possessed the ball for 38 minutes, and Miami for 21 minutes. Against Duke, they had 8 turnovers.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. He's not the OC, but a pattern has emerged.
Yep. Robert, to your question, Eli Drinkwitz at Missouri. That's the head coach there. That's a name to look at too. So,
yeah. Mike, normally I would say yes, but I just don't think Gaddis is that guy. I'm sorry, I just don't. Michigan's offense did not skip a beat. I just don't think that the Gaddis. I'm not saying he's terrible, but I don't mind them firing Gaddis.
Frank coming in with some good names. I think he's one of those that's an interesting topic as well. And again, you're talking about standards and what you're looking for in a football program. But yeah, PJ Fleck is that's a good one. Frank, thanks for the comments and the interactions. You've been hot on some good ones tonight.
Yeah, he's been on. I mean, all of chat has. If I'm being 100,
Yeah.
They have been killing it this evening.
Fire.
Now, Mike, the more I think about this, here's where I think I will meet you in the middle. I disagree. I think that the Gaddis firing, I'm perfectly okay with it. I think that offense wasn't working, and the most damning aspect of it is your young star quarterback regressed, and regressed hard. I don't think you can have that. But knee-jerk and panic, I actually do agree with you on panic, and the reason I agree with you is I think it goes to prove my greater point. There is a deficiency that has continued to emerge its ugly head time and time again. Justin Herbert, going into that draft, everybody knew he had upside. But if you listen to draft experts, if you really listen to film guys, it was hard to gauge who Herbert was. You knew you had a guy with an unreal ceiling, but the offense he played in was throwing screen passes at rates that the NFL never even dreams of doing. So who is he? Who is he? Well, now we know. Unbelievable. But who is he? So that's going to be my last one. Now, I did want to go through some comments right here, and I know Matt.
I got a name that not necessarily is on the hot seat, but going back to the question that we asked at the beginning, it was coaches that need to have a big year, right? I would add a couple first year coaches that would need to have a great year just to kickstart their tenure at their respective schools. So am I no way saying that they're on the hot seat, but names to watch to have
almost reverse hot seat, right? Like the reverse of it. Like, hey, you're going to
this
do
is
yourself
a reverse hot
lot.
seat.
Yeah,
so
I like this.
Matt Rule at Nebraska
Ooh.
would be a name to watch, and then the other name to watch, and it just left my mind. I may have to come back if I forgot it, but a name that I was thinking about earlier. One of the comments kind of spurred that on, but I'm looking at a guy like Matt Rulin to see what he does in his first year.
Nebraska needs it, man. That's a fan base hungry.
Yep. So just a name to throw out there to pique some interest in Nebraska. And then obviously Deion Sanders is another one, first year head coach, to really jumpstart that and make that.
Yeah, if he goes in there and really gets some work done, they're going to next offseason is going to be so fun.
Yep.
If they go in there and do.
But yeah, first year head coaches that would really do them really, really well to start off years.
Oh,
those two.
My
Luke,
God, Frank.
Yep, that's it. That's the name. Frank, my boy.
My
Frank
God.
the Tank. That was the name I had, and I blanked it. But yeah, Luke Fickell goes up there in the Big Ten, and has a really, really good year. That would do great to kickstart.
Great one.
Bring the black shirts back. Absolutely.
Well, I'll tell you who else. Kenny Dillingham with Arizona State.
Yep.
That program. Once again, guys, if you're tuning in or if you took a little break and you just came back in, the names we're talking about now are in no way, shape, or form on the hot seat. This is almost reverse hot seat. We're talking about first-year head coaches that, I mean, really with a good first year.
That would need a really good kickstart to jump their needle up.
Whenever we look at Kenny Dillingham with Arizona State, they're coming off of a lot of chaos. And one of the themes when I was talking about, whenever I was talking about Jaden Daniels before this season, I would always ask the question, who is he? I don't know. Yep. And there were people that were saying, oh, well, he's not going to be able to succeed in the SEC at LSU. And my whole thing was, how do we know? The one time we saw him where there wasn't chaos, the young man was balling his freshman year. Like, obviously, we knew how much of a ceiling he had. But at the same time, he was just in a chaotic situation. Yep. He goes
go ahead.
He goes to LSU, and I mean, we see good quarterback, good football player. But for Arizona State, removing that chaos and getting in some consistency will be big. We talked about them being a talent-rich school,
grabbing the in-state talent, and a guy that I'm really excited for. Justin, you nailed it. Kevin Wilson at Tulsa. I'm excited to see his tenure there and his first year there with some of the staff that he's hired. Steve Spurrier Jr., a couple other people there. Really, really excited. They're right in my backyard, so I'm going to try to get to a couple of their games at least this year. But Tulsa and Kevin Wilson is an exciting. I'm excited about them and what they can do, because I've always kind of been a secret closet fan of Tulsa just growing up in the 918. But always loved their program and always loved Kevin Wilson since his days at OU and stuff like that. So a fun one to watch is Tulsa and what Kevin Wilson has done. Just recruiting and putting together a really cool staff and what they could do offensively. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Cody's in chat, real upset for some reason, unbeknownst to me. Mad at SEC fans. Well, some people are mad at whatever moves. I don't know. But I don't know. I'd be excited, Cody. I wouldn't be that mad. But hey, Yeah. What are you going to do? Now, Matt, you had a question earlier about a 5-star linebacker out the state of Georgia, Sammy Brown. Now, it's way up there. I'm not going to go find the comment because I'm dyslexic, and I'm going to not only am I dyslexic, I'm ADD, so I'm going to misread something. My mind will go to that, and I'll forget what I was doing.
Yeah, it said, is Sonny Brown coming to OU?
Look, here's the thing, man.
Sammy Brown, not Sonny Brown. Sonny Brown played safety in the 80s at OU.
Yeah, Sammy Brown. Here's the thing, man. One thing we know about the Brown recruitment is that he was always going out and camping at Clemson or always visiting to Clemson. Whenever I'd be looking at like the weekend visitations for a lot of these big programs, Sammy Brown always out at Clemson when Brent Venables was out there. So they have a great relationship. Yeah. Not only do they have that relationship, but at the same time, we know that this OU staff can recruit in the SEC. And furthermore, Venables is a linebacker guy. That's what he coaches. And he does so very, very well. So
absolutely.
I'm not going to sit here and say that it's an all OU battle because let's be honest,
the big hitters are involved in this one. You've got the kids out of Jefferson, Georgia. If you haven't heard of him, he's the number one linebacker according to 247, number 6 player nationally, second overall player in the state of Georgia. As a composite scorer, he's the number 4 player in Georgia, 12th nationally. But Clemson, Georgia, Ohio State, Oklahoma, Alabama are the 5 vying for this young man's talent. If you have not seen his film, go put on his film. Jefferson, Georgia, home of Corey Smith, really good country music singer. Kid is uber talented. 6'2 and a half, 225. The kid can run, move, tackle, very athletic, and whoever gets his services is adding a very, very good linebacker to their room and to their talent.
Oklahoma has to feel as good as anybody in this battle because of that pre-existing relationship. And in recruiting, relationships are so powerful.
Yep.
I mean, they are so powerful. He says, kid is a man-child. Yeah.
He can play. And he's right. And funny thing is, he's right in Georgia's backyard because Jefferson, Georgia is right there at Athens pretty much.
Yeah.
So he's right there. He's in that little cluster of Georgia, Clemson right there. And then obviously the relationship he's had with Coach Venables and that staff. And then obviously Alabama, Ohio State are definite players in all this too, because you're talking about the 5, arguably, the 5 best programs in college football history.
All going at
him. So, and
why wouldn't you want to watch this one?
Yeah, this is going to be a great recruiting battle. One I'm going to love to watch, and it'll be interesting to see where his officials go. Because he's probably going to take an official to each one of these schools because you get 5. So,
I can imagine he'll be at Oklahoma.
Yeah, I think Oklahoma will get an official visit. Now,
no
this
doubt.
is just me right off the cuff with not talking to anybody. I think Oklahoma will get an official. I think Clemson will still probably get an official.
I think they will.
Kirby Smart, you have to imagine that he's going to get an official. Why wouldn't you? I would go.
But if I may, Drew, if he doesn't take an official to Georgia, don't read too much into it. And
it's home.
He can take an unofficial visit there tonight.
Yeah, because
he wants
7. It's like 10 minutes to Athens.
Yeah. So
that's how close we're talking. Jefferson, Georgia to Athens. It's right there. I mean, he doesn't need to take an official because it's essentially on the university's dime. What are they paying $20 in gas for him to get there? Or?
Maybe. I mean, you know what I mean? Like,
so yeah, so don't read too much into, oh shoot, Georgia didn't get an official visit. Well, he's 15 minutes from campus. So
yeah, and we know what Georgia does. Recruiting, development. I mean,
2-time national champion. Yeah.
We know what they do.
Yeah.
We know what they do. But all that to say, Oklahoma is in this battle. I mean, they are ferociously in it. Now, one thing I did disagree with PG the other day. Whenever we were talking,
I never agree. I never disagree with PG at all, ever.
No, PG is amazing. But whenever y'all were talking, because I was watching. He was saying he doesn't think Georgia's has got a real good shot ending up with the number 1 recruiting class this year. And I absolutely agree with him in the sense of there are going to be teams really pushing. Yep. But what did you just say? Sammy Brown was ranked? Give me that ranking again.
He's 6 to 10 national or 6 to 12 nationally.
And in the state of Georgia, you said he's 4th?
Well, he is
on the composite. I think
he's
4th in the composite.
4th in the composite in the state of Georgia, 12th nationally. Yeah. And then the 247, 6, number 1 linebacker. He's the number 1 linebacker in the state of Georgia.
In the nation. Yeah.
In the nation too. Yeah.
Well, here's the reason, Drew. This kid is a top 15 player, and he's number 4 in his own state. Georgia's loaded this year. They're loaded this year. Yep. And so Kirby, they don't have to go far. Yep. They just open up the doors, and while it's not guaranteed, it certainly helps their chances at fighting.
And we talked about quarterbacks. I think this was on my show or your show. I don't know. They all run together for me. But Georgia high school football quarterback has played in the national championship, I think, the last 5 years or something like that. Something wild,
like
that. Yeah.
Going back to Trevor Lawrence, it's
yep.
been every national championship since Trevor Lawrence and Clemson has featured a Georgia quarterback.
Yep, and not only quarterbacks, but talent through that state is just unfreaking believable.
Very,
You're
very
talking
talent
from top to bottom, from the Atlanta area down to South Georgia, Valdosta, around the border of. I mean, you're talking about like around the Athens area, stuff like that. Augusta's had a lot of talent, and just a loaded, rich talent for high school football in the state of Georgia.
And, one of the things I talked about a year ago, genuinely a year ago, about to the day, this will be one of my final points of the evening, but one of my major points for why I thought Alabama was destined for the number one recruiting class, and not only destined for the number one recruiting class in 2023, I thought they could push that Texas A&M class from the year before to which class would end up number one all time in the modern recruiting rankings. Now, ultimately, A&M won that battle. A&M still has the number one class all time. But the big reason I said that for Alabama is you looked in the state for the Crimson Tide, and you had so much talent. The number 3 safety in the nation, Tony Mitchell, who was a 5-star his entire process up until the very end, and he's a high 4-star. So 5-star, 4-star, you're splitting hairs there. You have Jaleel Hurley, 5-star cornerback. You had Peter Woods, 5-star defensive lineman, who's going to Clemson. You had James Smith, 5-star defensive lineman, going to Bama. Quay Russaw, 5-star outside linebacker.
Yeah, there's no lack of talent in the state of Alabama either. And even you can even go back years ago. I remember when I was in high school.
But it was disproportionately so last year. Like, you're right, it's always loaded, but last year was
a lot.
And it's
I could go back to the days of like when Hoover High School was rolling with Rush Probst and all them, and then you had guys like really good in-state talent with Jameis Winston. You had like oh my gosh, freaking receiver Julio Jones, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So you've had a ton of talent over the years when you're talking about Georgia and Alabama, respectively, through the years of high school football.
Well, Julio's from Foley, yeah.
Yep.
Really a big part of jumpstarting Alabama into what they are. But Hank, you're 100% right. If Bama didn't win the James Smith battle, this would have still been a stellar recruiting class. But Bama fans would have been a little bit hurt because there was a position for Bama they had to have an elite guy at, and they got a few. Edric Hill, James Smith were not right. But if they could have gotten Peter Woods, that would have just been the cherry on this class.
That would have been like if we would have gotten DJ Hicks at Oklahoma.
That guy is a beast, man. He's a freak. Did you see the All-American game? And he was just tossing cats out the club?
Yep.
He and Keon Keeley had exceptional.
While we're on the topic of recruiting, watch out for players in the state of South Carolina as well. They've had a ton of really good talent, and Shane Beamer's done a great job. We're talking about Clemson and all that stuff, but there is a lot of high school football talent in the state of South Carolina. I could go back thinking, because I actually graduated from high school in South Carolina and stuff like that.
That's right.
Got to play with AJ Green and a couple of those guys. When, as a whole, I always watch South Carolina recruiting just because I've got a lot of friends and a lot of coaches that coach in South Carolina. If you're looking for some names and some cool recruiting battles and stuff like that to check out, there's a lot of talent in Alabama, Georgia, and definitely South Carolina, and then obviously Florida. We know that, but
yeah,
South Carolina is in their own respect has a lot of good high school football talent.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, man, we've been going for an hour and 20 minutes just about, and it's the quote unquote off season, and I'm forcing us off of here. This is
well, it's not even close to our record.
So no.
We had the signing day episode.
6.5 hours.
6.5 hours.
Yeah. I did 5 videos and then a 6.5 hour live stream after that. Yeah, that was fun. That was a ton of fun. But man, let the people know where they can find all your great content. I'm sure this isn't the last time they'll be seeing you, but as always, they need to know.
Hey, first guest on Through the Haze. I'm honored. So you guys, before I plug my show, Ty is going to be doing a lot of live streams with this college football show. You guys, if you haven't followed him yet, you're crazy. Hit that bell. like, subscribe, comment. He does a phenomenal job. And every time I get to be a part of his show, I always have to pinch myself because I consider him a good friend and everything like that, but does a great job. And he is one of the most unbiased Crimson Tide college football fans. He calls it like it is. You're not going to always agree with his takes, but he does a phenomenal job. And one day maybe I'll get to his level. But for us, we do.
That's not a level at all, man.
Hey, it's a level that I'm shooting for.
I'm at the bottom.
Yeah.
Looking up.
But the Under Official Review podcast is a college football NFL podcast that I do with my friend Zach Merrill. He's a Buckeye fan, but you can follow us. I put a comment up here in this one, so you can go back and see us. The Under Official Review podcast. We're a growing channel. We get things going. We talk college football, NFL stuff. We just had our Super Bowl preview come out. Yeah, there it is. Yesterday. So go check that out. Also, if you're an OU fan, the Anything OU podcast, relaunched that with my buddy Christian Williams. We do strictly OU content, all athletics, nothing that just football, but everything across the board. We had a softball preview with Chris Plank just go out a couple days ago as well. Got the Sean White interview coming out, and then got some really, really cool ones out. If you're an OU fan, go over and check us out. We're Anything OU podcast, but we're on all the major platforms for both podcasts, Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube channel, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. And yeah, but if you're not a fan of Around the Table Sports and through the Haze live shows, you guys, I don't know what the heck you're doing. You gotta subscribe, follow, get this man to 20K. He deserves it because he's a great ambassador for the game of college football. And every time I'm on here, it's always a joy.
Appreciate that, man. That means a lot. But as far as when you can see us again, you already know I'll be having content coming your way tomorrow, Sunday. And Monday, we're right back at it live again with all the weekend's news and even more topics where we'll be going into more of your favorite teams and all the college football news. But until then, we'll see y'all next time. That's it. See ya.